Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today, we're going to be discussing Rooted in Place, Preserving Latinx Heritage in Ohio and Beyond. Our presenter today is Hillary Morales Robles. In a moment, I'll introduce Hillary, but first, before we get started, first I wanted to thank the Ohio Department of Development for funding webinars like these. I'd also like to give a special thanks to Main Street, downtown Greenfield, whose office I'm presenting from right now. They were kind enough to share their space with us today, so thanks once again. So before we get started, I just wanted to go over a couple quick housekeeping items with everyone, just to make sure that the webinar is a good experience for you. So first off, we'll be taking questions at the end of today's webinar, but please type them into the chat box as you have them, and we'll get those answered at the end of the webinar for you. Also, this webinar is being recorded, so if you want to find the recording later, we'll be sending that out to everyone tomorrow afternoon, and you'll be getting a copy about 2 p.m. tomorrow, along with some other information about this webinar. Also, if you experience any troubles with the webinar, such as screen seems to be strange, audio is cutting out, just close down the webinar, click the link that was sent to you, sign back in, that'll usually solve your problems. So before we get started, I just want to introduce Hillary to everyone. Hillary Morales Robles is a historic preservation officer with Latinos and Heritage Conservation, where she focuses on safeguarding and elevating the cultural heritage of Latino communities across the United States. She's a passionate preservation architect. Lori holds a master's in architecture and a master's of science in historic preservation from the University of Pennsylvania and a bachelor's of environmental design with a minor concentration in art history from the University of Puerto Rico. So without further ado, I'll turn things over to Hillary. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. As Devin mentioned, feel free to anytime drop some questions in the chat. I'm happy to ask any questions. One thing to note, I've been collaborating with Heritage Ohio for a while, so it's good to be on the other side, presenting to you today. So I'll be sharing my screen in a minute. And we go from there. Sounds good? Let's see. How are we doing?
You're full screen and we should be good to go.
Awesome. No, thank you so much, Devin, for everything.
Yep.
So, hello, everyone. Welcome to join the conversation. So, as Devin mentioned, I'm History Preservation for Latinos in Heritage Conservation. We are a nationwide nonprofit organization dedicated to safeguard Latino heritage sites across all the 50 states and territories. So, to talk a little bit about us as an organization, we were founded in 2014. Um, as a movement, as part of the movimiento in the Southwest. We started with like our beautiful founders like Antonia Castañeda, we had Dolores Huerta, and also our amazing executive director, Sila Mota Casper, who used to work in the National Trust. And since 10 years from now has passed already, they've been growing this diverse network of intergenerational advocates preserving Latinos heritage sites across Ohio. So now we are celebrating our 10-year anniversary. If you want to learn more about the organization, there's a QR code, and there's multiple QR codes through the presentation. So do not worry, you're not gonna miss us anytime. So kind of share a little bit of our mission. Our mission is to build a movement that affirms Latinx heritage through education, conservation, and leadership development. As I mentioned, all of our members, staff, board, we're all preservation in different ways. We have from politicians to preservation architects like me, educators, museum directors, nonprofit experts, planners, etc. So that's allow us to have a very diverse conversation and constantly question about what Latino heritage looks like. Our vision is to have a just world, world that values Latino heritage people and places. So today I'm gonna particularly present about the Endangered Latinx Landmarks Program, which I'm currently leading, and we just closed our first cycle. We will be announcing the the first Endangered Latinx Landmarks list on September 16th, so stay tuned. So the program is the first one ever done that is fully dedicated to identify and protect Latino heritage sites across the United States, facing urgent threats like demolition, gentrification, neglect, tourism, and climate change. Those spaces carry powerful cultural and historical legacy. Our goal is to create visibility to these stories. So actually, one of the hardest things that has been part of this process is site identification. So Ohio is one of those many places that we keep finding amazing stories that are not documented or under research. So hopefully, like through this program, we can create visibility and like learn those stories and how to preserve them for future generations. So I'm gonna cover a little bit more about that. So Latino heritage in Ohio. So Ohio is one of those states that be like, are there Latinos in Ohio or how long they've been here? So actually, I was able to found that since early 20th century, there's evidence of especially Mexican and Caribbean heritage on Ohio, particularly 1920s. There's a huge boom of migration of Mexican populations on alongside the Lake Erie area. So there's some presence in Lorain, Toledo, Cleveland. Those are the major areas that there's earliest presence of Latinos. And then after between 1920s, 1940s, there was a huge migration of Puerto Ricans and Cubans coming from the East Coast, like New York City, to work in factories. So there's a lot of stories of early industrial history heritage tied to Latino neighborhoods, particularly in Lorain. There's evidence of entire neighborhoods, like we call it historia barrios, that where these Mexican Puerto Rican communities work alongside the Ford Company, mill and steel industry. So, so there's a lot of sites that are not recognized on the National Register that deserves recognition. So, being in the process of capturing slowly over time this story. So, also, lastly, I think to note, it was recognized that the Latino community is the fastest growing minority population in Ohio. So, I mean, I'm a testament of that. Like I'm based in Columbus, Ohio. So there has been a huge major shift in population in recent years that uh, so we need to think ahead of the game in how to preserve those stories, given that our presence has become more and more prevalent and in our urban and rural settings. So some examples, again, this is only two. I bet there's so many out there. So if you know anything, please put in the chat. So my first encounter of records in terms of archival and documentation associated with Latino heritage in general in Ohio is all through oral history captures, which is there's an amazing oral history archive as part of the Latino heritage studies in Ohio State University. There's amazing records on oral histories of Latino presence in places like Akron, Lorain, Toledo, Cleveland, Cincinnati, etc. So I have a lot of friends that were part of this project, and the amazing oral historian, she was able to collect all these stories, and they're fully available through the OSU archives. Another major project that I would love to highlight is the Lorain Historical Society. They did currently they have an exhibition called Celebrating 100 Years of Latino Heritage History in Ohio, where they talk about the role of urban renewal in erasing neighborhoods in Lorain, Ohio. So we had conversations with them, and they were talking about the process that they, in terms of collaborating and engaging with like-minded folks with Overland College, also El Centro in Lorain, and together they have been building this incredible archive over the last couple of years, and they keep learning and expanding in terms of themes, including like war veteran history, music, food, etc. So these are like some of the examples that I have. In terms of, oh, one second. Sorry about that. Oh, sorry about that. It was a phone call. Um, so one thing to mention is the Latino Heritage Tools Tracker. So one thing part of the Endangered program is to showcase how to capture these stories, correct? So one thing that we do, and I'm gonna share this little briefly, the Latinos Roots Tracker displays feature map layers on a dashboard. This is thanks to our wonderful project, geospatial project manager, Karina. I think she's probably in the chat, which is great. The dashboard is embedded in our main website. So one of the things that we're doing, apart from capturing endangered sites currently, is also the lost stories. So um, one of the things that we're capturing is a lot of social clubs in the 70s, LGBTQ sites, churches, abandoned Mexican American cemeteries, etc. Our goal with this tracker that is part of our Endangered program is to use branding and language, both in English and Spanish, to ensure accessibility for all audiences. Also, we do have we call it the hotline, where we capture lively. Anyone can share with us some stories. So one thing I'm gonna do quickly is to stop sharing my screen because I think there's a story that I would love to share in terms of particularly to Ohio that I learned and it was a great learning lesson for us to keep expanding those narratives. 1 minute. Okay, we're back. So this is the Latino Heritage Tuesday. So when you go to our website, we have the beautiful website that our team is so talented. So apart from like you can nominate an endangered landmark anytime, we do this on a rolling basis. We do have this resource that can be accessible to anyone. So one thing, for example, to look at Ohio, we have the Club Azteca that was in Cleveland, Ohio. And one thing that we are trying to capture is like significant statements about, in this case, the Club Azteca, it was it's part of the Detroit Avenue, and it had a significance under the criterion A on ethnic heritage associated with Hispanic population. And they established this social club in the 1930s by Mexican immigrants. So when you look at our tracker itself, you can learn about this story in detail, including the advocacy efforts that were done prior to the demolition in 2021. So we're capturing from like photographs to former conditions, development plans in this case, because unfortunately got demolished. But this is one of the main reasons that we are doing the work in terms of capturing the stories that even they're gone, they're still important to tell so we can capture the rich history of Latino presence in Ohio in general. So that's one of the main examples that we are capturing currently, and happy to share more about that. So going back to, am I back, Devin? Am I back to the PowerPoint?
No, I think you have to stop sharing and then reshare it.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm back. So one of the things that I want to share, apart from this amazing work that we're doing currently for Endanger, is that maybe you have a question of how we can engage with Latino communities in Ohio, given that maybe there may be issues with language access. A lot of our elders don't speak English, so they need access to um, like-minded folks that can speak the language, and you're like wondering how we can create this opportunity. So there's a lot of really good case studies that come from our organization that we're happy to share. So one thing that we're doing is the Wallace Project. The Wallace Project, we collect oral histories that amplify stories of important people, movement, and sites. This is particularly we just won one of the awards from ESRI for our Brasileiro Story Map program. where they capture all the stories of the South Texas heritage on Bracero history. So they just got the award, and we're so excited. And hopefully we can keep expanding this narrative, particularly in the Midwest. So kind of I have the mental project for myself to help expanding the story. So if you know any elder that will be helpful to like share and learn more about these sites, please share with us. We also have the Latino Preservation Toolkit. So one of the things that we really care about is to provide education through preservation. Um, so one of the things a lot of these communities, because they have been overlooked over decades, they don't know they have these resources at hand in terms of preservation, let's say tax credits or funding to protect sites and places. So one thing we do have to offer is the toolkit. It's a bilingual booklet that empowers communities demystifying preservation. So we kind of remove the jargon that is very technical, which is still valuable. But in terms of education, we can provide opportunity to learn more about this. Um, Currently, we're in the process of building our second edition for the toolkit called more focus on the borderlands stories, where it includes quotes, case studies from different site topologies, etc. Also, one of the major issues with preservation, in particular Latino heritage, is funding. So we are so blessed and honored to be able to provide resources, for primarily funding. So we had just launched our first cycle of our Nuestra Herencia Grant program, where we allocate over $600,000 annually to Latino heritage projects, particularly capital projects, project planning, programming interpretation, um, etc. We will be, I think, launching our next cycle in the fall. So stay tuned. So if you know any organization out there that would love to protect Latino stories and places, this could be a good way to collaborate with us. Okay. Also, one thing to do, we need more presence in terms of experts, Latino professionals in the field preservation. It's actually working with Latinos in Heritage Conservation was my first time in over a decade working with and for Latinos. So it's a very unique and very honor to work with them. So we do have a program called Semilla Scholars where we offer paid fellowships to graduate students interested to advocate for Latino heritage. So we have from preservationists to archivists to geospatial managers, etc. So if you want to be if you know a young person, someone early in the field that would love to get an experience with us, feel free to stay tuned. We do offer fellowships on a yearly basis. So currently we do have two fellows working with us doing story maps on different stories across the borderlands. So it's something that we do care is to provide opportunities to our Latino um, emerging professionals. So in that way we can keep expanding our network as experts. So on Tool Source of the Borderlands is one of the many initiatives that we offer that we just received an amazing funding to focus primarily on Tool Stories of the Borderlands, where we just came back from our trip. So that would be part of the second edition of the Preservation Toolkit. But our goal is to provide a community-driven approach to historic preservation. And that's something that, our communities do know. They have been resilient through decades and they have so much knowledge to share and how they're being able to preserve their heritage. And if you want to learn more about if you want to meet us in person, actually, we have our next Congreso in 2026. This is our way to bring people together in the same table. So we will have a Midwest focus conference. So, well, we call it summit. But it's one thing I'm trying to do, particularly is to connect with all folks in Ohio that will love to be part of this, so we can learn about the stories and places. In terms of like strategies, one thing we do is community building and outreach. So we provide from trainees to teachers. We have a team, our education team for teaching us training workshops around preservation. And also we provide workshops on preservation services and technical assistance. That's something we are slowly over building over time. And also empowering, educating our nuestra gente or our people, where we provide educational webinars through, so you need to go to our website, where we do cafecitos every month to learn about the current issues they have in preservation, webinars that expand on education and preservation, etc. So I will be giving a quick shout out to our team. If you want to be part of our movement, anyone can be part of our movement. You don't have to be Latino. Anyone that would love to learn more about us as a community, as how to preserve our cultura, feel free to become a member, donate to continue support the work that we're doing. It's not without everyone's support that we are unable to do these amazing things to our community. So stay tuned. And I'm gonna end here. It's gonna be very brief, but feel free to contact me anytime. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop in the chat and we can have a conversation. I just wanted to have a very brief because there's so much learning. As you can tell, David, there's so many things that we can talk about Latino heritage, but I think I'm very curious about if people know about stories and places in Ohio that we should continue growing and research. Because I know the Midwest is one of those regions that are still under research and been slowly building over time, particularly alongside Lake Erie. We have those stakeholders in Lorain, for example, in Cleveland, where I keep learning about these places. But yeah, no, there's so many ways. If they have any questions, I'm gonna keep myself quiet for a minute. If you have any questions, I can't talk about that us all the time, so I'm gonna stop for a minute.
Thanks again, Hillary. Yes, if you have questions, please type them into the chat box, or you can raise your hand if you'd prefer to talk, and I can allow you to ask your question, Hillary. But I'll just start off with a kind of, half question here, half comment. Like particularly where I grew up in Northwest Ohio, there's a lot of agricultural history with Latino population. And I don't, and I think, just like so many other things, agricultural history kind of takes a backseat in a lot of people's heads because that's the past, and I think that, I'm just thinking of like, sites in Putnam County and Wood County that were north and west of where I grew up that were, they had housing for migrant workers, and these houses, they're small, but they were built in the 20s and 30s, and sites like that, I think, kind of an overlooked thing of preservation, but they're very important to the story of migration to Ohio. So I was just
Yes.
wondering if you've seen that in any other states where there's kind of, that discussion happening of, talking about the not so sexy kind of things about
Oh,
preservation.
well, for us, it's very sexy. So, no, that's actually one of the things that we keep coming up even more in our work. I don't, I think it's one of those things that make us unique in terms of the stories that there's evidence. Especially in the Southwest, there's a lot of agricultural heritage in terms of, um, I can give a sneak peek about one of the sites that we're going to be including in your list in September. It's a World War II dining hall that was used on an army base in Aurora, Colorado, that was
Mhm.
acquired by this Japanese family called the Tamaka family, and they moved the whole structure to Longmont, Colorado, and make it and turn it into housing for farmers. And the farmers, the farm workers that were living in these houses were Chicanos. So there's a lot of interesting. This and there we have seen this multiple times that repurpose World War II infrastructure turn into something else, from restaurants to worker housing, and this all happened in the 30s. So we've been finding army base structures in the middle of nowhere. When we say nowhere, I mean like rural areas. Um, and they were part of this telling a whole different story about, thinking about adaptive reuse. There's
Yeah.
some evidence very early 20th century that is fascinating. Um, and also cross-cultural relationships, correct? Like in this case, it's Japanese and Chicano history. That is one of the things that we also are where is very fascinating for us is the cross-cultural relationships, like beyond, of course we focus on Latino heritage, but we have come to a place where we are connecting with other organizations from for example, APA HIP, um, in this case, where we're dealing with Asian American and Latino heritage in the
Hmm.
same place, all these narratives are in the same place, and how we tell the story and celebrate and honor the stories at the same time is it makes us really fun, to be honest. It's like it makes my job really fun. I'm truly blessed on those things. And so that's one example. Also, we have Rio Vista Farm. Our executive director was part of the nomination for the National Register. And they just received funding from us to do a conservation work in the Quonset hut, it's a very contested site in terms of is where the uh, Mexican workers were getting fumigated with chemicals. And I went in person and we saw a prison cell, and I can imagine the heat, and these workers going through very, very harsh conditions and violence. But it's important to tell the story. So Rio Vista is one of those stories about Bracero program, agricultural history in the Southwest. Um, so we're seeing more and more evidence, and it's not through designation and research that we keep learning, expanding those stories. But yeah, we've been finding things in rural Colorado, rural Texas,
That's great to
and
hear.
I bet there's in Ohio. There's always something out there.
I'll ask one more question and then stop monopolizing you for questions. But so your abuelas program, I was thinking, that two things. A couple years ago, as right before the pandemic started, that in Europe there had been programs with kind of recruiting older grandmother types, older women in general, to help preserve culinary history of places. And I was thinking, and they also you started, kind of giving them, because a lot of these people had been retired, it gave them something to do with their time that they can give back to their community once again. But I was kind of thinking, there's kind of been, I'd say over the last 10, 15 years in Latino culture, a transition from just Latino pride to regional pride of where you came from. And, I was thinking, that really would, translate well to something like the Abuela program, where you're already getting that oral history kind of thing and using food as a vehicle to encourage people to participate. Have you seen anything like that happening?
Yeah, actually, I was talking with I mean, I can tell both from LEC perspective. There are also some preservation partners. For example, in Lorain, Colorado, I was talking with the director um, that is behind the exhibition, and I was asking how you made it happen because I know the answer, but I wanted to I want to learn like how they found out. And she said the same thing was like, oh, the way to convene our elders was the Latino elders was to bring them wine and food. Because that's very cultural too, like how we build communities around is food is very integral in building communities. So we started making a joke, oh, this has become expensive because of wine. And now we're turning into coffee and quesitos, which is a traditional pastry from Puerto Rico. So they've been very inventive and pivoting, constantly creating those moments to gather people in the same place. And in the case of Latinos in Heritage Conservation, the Wells Project is one of those things. One of the part of our current work in the borderlands, we're covering one of the themes that we have is culinary heritage, particularly in Tucson. As you know, Tucson is one of the UNESCO City of Gastronomy designation, designation. So there's a lot of Sonoran cuisine and stories and restaurants. So we have a whole theme about legacy businesses and learning about recipes and intergenerational knowledge and passing down this business through the grandchildren and how they've been honoring their
Mhm.
abuelas. Um, and it's so fun. It's so fun to see, especially the elders, part of those conversations. And also the grandchildren. Um, so in this case, particularly, we do one thing we do for sure, especially with oral history, we do give them honorariums because we treat them as wealth of knowledge. And so it compensates them for their time, but also we give them the product back. Anything we go there, we went in person. We have a camera, we have a recorder, we do an interview for very detailed so we walked them through the process so they feel safe, particularly in this time they're currently living with politics. A lot of our communities are feeling safe in sharing the stories. So one thing that we walk them through, is the rules of engagement. And, this is how we are protecting you. If you want to keep your name anonymous, we're gonna do that. So it's a lot of building, community building, and relationship and trust. And also make us ourselves responsible for, they don't feel that we are extracting from them is that
Sure.
we're building something together, and so they feel integral a part of the work that we're doing. So once we complete all like oral history transcriptions and everything, we give them back everything. Like, okay, here's the product. You can put it part of your own archive. And also we teach them how to do your own archive too. And oh my God, it's so fun to one of the stories that we capture in the Borderlands. They brought a bunch of postcards from their building through time, like over since the
It's
19th.
really cool.
I'm like, you've been collecting postcards? Like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, you're a preservationist. Here's your trained preservationist. And it's so important. Also, digitization is also another aspect of all these records. And one last thing to say about abuelas, they love chisme. We call it gossip. I mean, we say gossip is our way to convey oral histories. So that's why abuelas are very important, like our grandmas, because they are the
I like that.
carriers of history. So we say gossip is our way to do oral history. So chisme.
All right, so we'll get some audience questions here, Hillary. So the first question is, what tools and sources do you recommend for researching Latinx cultural sites like theaters, clubs, social spaces from the early 20th century?
Ooh. Oh my gosh. Okay. This is like one of my favorite questions because I'm a nerd. I think keywords are so critical. So I think that one thing I do the most in places that I don't know, I'm always very nosy. I mean, we can go back to being the gossip. I like to be nosy too. So phone calls. My best way to get answers sometimes it's just a phone call. With that, there's always organizations that have been in the work for decades, but they don't have websites. Believe me, they don't. So having a phone call, it always helps to start connecting the dots. Um, Also, working with the local, statewide, and citywide preservation organizations, so helpful. For example, in the state of Ohio, I will collaborate with Heritage Ohio, like, hey, do you know something? A lead, or a more citywide organization, let's say the Cincinnati Preservation Association, or Columbus Landmarks, or Cleveland Restoration. So reaching out those local preservation organizations help significantly to get access to those information. And if they don't know, they know someone who might know. So that's how It's always, I call it like a chain. There's a domino effect. Once you reach out to someone, you know all of them. So that's kind of I personally, that's my go-to. Um, Also, of course, thinking about trust is extremely important. Sometimes even, simplifying the questions. Some people love to sometimes they don't know how much value their place has until you bring it up or you're curious to learn about their own story. So one thing when I'm reaching out, let's say, owner or like a theater in this case, and I want to talk with the owner, it's like, how you can ask a very simple question like, how you ended up in this place, like how you acquired it, and they tell you everything, like like it's just one question, and they take a whole hour of your time, and you get all the details said. Because sometimes, when we as experts, like, from my perspective of an expert, um when we try to curate too much a conversation, we limit ourselves to get the information we need because sometimes we don't know what we need until we open our minds. So yeah, no, be curious, be surprised, get surprised. It's always so fun. Also, I like to find events that are associated with, let's say, in Latino heritage. That's how I actually build my network so quickly at Latinos here in Ohio. I just show up when I'll be like, uh, especially Latino Heritage Month, you have so many opportunities to engage. So, there's always people, um, a lot of celebrations and um, outreach that you can do easily in those events. Uh, I hope that answered
Kind
the
of a
question.
Yeah, I think so. A related question here, and maybe we can add a little bit to this one. Reina is asking, thinking about partnerships, is it useful for preservation organizations to try to connect with or partner with community local nonprofits to support the Latino community? Do you have any
Whoa.
advice on how to build those relationships up?
Oh, yeah, okay. So it's some in a similar vein. Yeah, I think I honestly I would love to. You should definitely talk with Barb from Lorain Historical Society because it is, again, it's the same thing. And especially thinking of if you're seeing this through the lens if you're an organization that you're not part of that community, let's say, um you're wondering how to connect. Honestly, I think what the first step is always to know who already is doing the work um and be like be clear and transparent about your intentions and start building that relationship. I know, for example, in Lorain Historical Society, when they started learning about, they keep Barb was mentioning that they keep hearing about the presence of Latinos, and it's like, okay, as us as an organization, how we can engage with this. So they start connecting with El Centro, which is a local nonprofit that is more dedicated to provide general services to the community, like from healthcare to, but they know everyone. They have been decades building those relationships with community members. So they connected with them, and the leader of the centro started telling all these stories about the presence of Latinos in the neighborhood. And from there, they connected with this amazing woman from Overland who was interested in the oral history project. And that's how they started building this over time. And then they got funding to do the exhibition. And it takes time. I think one thing to do, disregarding the community you're dealing with, building relationships is the hardest. It's a slow burn, It's like there's a good and manifesto that I love always to reference. It's called the Black Space Manifesto, and one of um, the rules of engagement they have is moving at the speed of trust. And it's like that. It's just, constantly communicating. It's never too little to communication, like especially Latinos, to talk, as you can tell. But but it's like that. Also, of course, I want to encourage you to connect with us, because we're happy to, becoming help you build that network and on a regional basis. Where it's something that we're trained to do is coalition building.
Thanks, Hillary. Next question here is kind of talking about spaces in Ohio. So during urban renewal, the construction of the interstate system, many cultural areas for the Black community of Ohio were demolished and erased. Were there also centers of Latin communities in Ohio that were erased? And if so, how are you preserving the history of those?
Uh, oh my God, this I'm just doing a little shout out to Lorain. But they are the ones who started identifying these. And one so there's a main street called Vine Avenue in Lorain, which is part of the South Lorain was the largest concentration of Latinos in since early 20th century. And Vine Avenue became this hub, like thriving commercial strip that has social clubs, grocery stores, churches, parks, etc. And if you see today, if you're gonna get mad, I will encourage you to look at Google Maps. It's Colony Race. It's so yeah, it became targeted by urban renewal. And that's why this has become an issue because places no longer existing, they're unable to tell the story. It's not only through our history that we've been learning that these places existed, or even Vine Avenue on it as a street. It doesn't exist anymore as it was. So that's one of the biggest examples that I can offer in terms of Ohio base. And so that when they start identifying about Vine Avenue, it became the same thing. Like they keep hearing about Vine Avenue. I'm like, what about it? And then once they start going through contacting the elders, they have photos, they had memories. And also, I think one important thing about South Lorraine is also there's other communities that were around it. There's a Hungarian heritage too in that area. So there's a lot of interesting story of cross-cultural relationship between the Latinos and the Hungarians, etc. So I will highly recommend you to look at that exhibition. Let me put on my gonna search it real quick. I'm a fan. I honestly, I know how hard it is, and they did it, and they got two awards, so this should be celebrated. Um, but this is the exhibition. I think they're currently active. They are a traveling exhibit, so yeah, if you want to learn more, this is one of the biggest examples of the impacts of urban renewal. And I know in the same vein is happening in other Midwestern cities, like in Indianapolis. There's evidence of historic barrios that are completely gone. But it's kind of the same thing where we're looking at black neighborhoods, even Columbus. We were working with when I mean we I mean when I was working with landmarks, Columbus landmarks, we were working with the Mount Vernon Avenue and like trying to there was a whole project that's called Ghost Neighborhoods by OSU, Urban Regional Analysis Department, where they're trying to reimagine what it was. So they're looking at sandboard maps, like analyzing how the urban environment shifted over time. And on top of including the oral histories, it helps to tell the story as complete as possible. So now they are creating 3D-dimensional reimagination of what it was prior to the highway. So we can still tell, they were there. And thanks to those type of work at Mount Avenue as we know today, um, it became in the National Register last year, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
recently it became part of the history district. So that's the thing. That's the type of work that we would love to do for Latino main streets too.
Okay, so let's just say I know of a historic site for Latino heritage,
Oh
and
wait.
I looked on the Roots Tracker, and I don't see where my site is. So, what's the steps to engage with your organization so I can get something listed that
Uh,
I think is very important to
well,
Ohio's
always.
Latino history?
Yeah, I mean, call me out. I'm gonna put my email in the chat. But one thing to do, let me walk you through it. Why not? You can do it by yourself. You don't need to call me. But if you want to see my face, feel free. Anytime. Latino Heritage, the US. Hmm. So, actually, I don't have my link. Okay, email me. But we do have we're using survey 1 through 3 through GIS. And it's a public survey that has very simplified questions in terms of um, what is the name of the place? What is the address? Even if you don't know the address, that's okay. You can give us an estimate. Um, why is significant? What's the story that you know? Even if you don't have the full story, that's okay. So we kind of start building the pieces together. But site identification, honestly, is the hardest. So if you know, it helps us keep expanding those stories. So in that way, through the public survey, it auto-populates and the tracker, and we keep an eye on it. Also, I will get the nudge and regardless. So I think if you know something, please email me. I'm always interested to learn about places, being able to make it visible. But yeah, no, we are looking from um, dining halls to social clubs, theaters, churches, cemeteries. Um, I think my most fun one recently, let me see. Oh, there's so many fun ones. Oh, with a lot of things that are emerging a lot in our work is murals. So many mural conservation work. Related to Chicano movement. The Chicano muralists from the West Coast. And we keep finding evidence of other Chicano muralists in Chicago, Washington, D.C., and I know that they keep popping up. It will become a more prevalent theme over the next couple of years because the earliest presence of Chicano murals was in the 70s. So they just became recently historic, like at within the 50-year mark. So I know this type of work will help expand even preservation as a practice because I bet that other communities are doing similar things in different ways, in very unique ways. So we're learning together.
Sounds great. All right, Hillary, I'm not seeing any other questions. So if you have any final questions, type them in now. But if you have questions later, you can always email Hillary. Her email's right there in the chat. But also, she'll be at our conference in October in Canton, I believe on
Yeah.
Thursday, October 16th. So if you want to attend her session, just go to heritageohioconference.com to get registered. We have our early bird rate still as well right now. So you have until August 31st, I believe, is the last date for the early bird rate. So get yourself there and get registered, and you can visit Hillary at our conference. So thanks once again, Hillary, for doing this today. It was really wonderful. And, I'm sure people in this webinar and people watching the recording on YouTube are going to have, oh yeah, what about this place? What about this place? So get ready for those emails
Yeah,
from
no,
people in Ohio.
honestly, I am in the hunt for more stories. And it's just, it makes I think one thing that can is applicable to any community, cultural community, is that it's not until we have all these stories that we can see the full picture and be start
Mhm.
making patterns. And it's just not, sometimes we think, oh, it's just rare. I'm like, no, there's always a reason. And we keep tying with, like, historical context, and um, it also help us as as preservation experts to rethink our work constantly. And that's why being in preservation is the best job. Just saying. Devin and
It
I are
definitely
having a
is.
great time in preservation. Yeah, feel
So
free
if
to
you
keep supporting Heritage Ohio. Also, if LAC anytime, feel free to sign up to our newsletter. We always have really fun events, webinars, same. We're gonna continue collaborating together.
make sure you check out their website, which is Latino. I'm mixing it up already. Latinos and Heritage Conservation. There we go. Latinos and Heritage Conservation. They have an amazing website to look through. It's very beautiful to look at, very well designed. Tons and tons of information. So please check them out. Thanks once again, Hillary. Thank you, everyone, for attending today, and we hope to see you at our next webinar. Thank you.
Adios.